Our next talk will be given by Manuel Brnjic, who is an architect at Topologies, and his talk will be on DataOps, how to apply DataOps to an existing organization and thus enable the data science development and analytics to deliver valuable insights and results. We'll be talking about the most important roles in a DataOps team and learn how to create a proper team topology. Without further ado, I will now present to you Manuel. Here we go.
So, hi, I can hear you.
Can you hear us? Brilliant. We can hear you as well. And welcome to the conference, and we will look forward to your talk.
Thank you very much. Okay, maybe a short introduction. I'm Manuel, and I'm currently a software architect at Topologies in Vienna, Austria. And today I will tell you basically about the journey that I started about 6 years ago in letting companies or enterprises become data-driven quite fast by applying DataOps. And so let's give it a start. I hope the slide is switching. Okay. Yeah, first of all, what is DataOps? Usually, if people talk about DataOps, they think about the specific or dedicated team that comes into a company and changes the whole way of thinking, the whole way of working. But behind DataOps, there is much more. So, in fact, it's not really tied to a technology or a tool or a language or programming language or framework. Usually, all tools or all measures inside a company that support DataOps, they proactively promote collaboration, access, ease of use to data, orchestration of data, but also security. Not to forget about the GDPR in Europe, of course, but more to that in the next slides. So how does it usually start? So what I came across a few years ago is that usually companies hire some mathematicians or some data scientists. They start and try to find some valuable data inside the company. They ask various people in the IT department, hey, can you give me some access to the database? I want to have a look. I need this data. I need that data. Most of the time, the problem is that those people don't really know where to look for, but they don't know on what data or on what data sources can they really rely on, because sometimes you start using a data set and after a few months you come across or stumble upon that actually another data source would probably be the real source of the data, but you used, for example, a filtered view or something that is not meant to have to give you direct access to the database. So with all that said, it's not just about the data access, but just let me check. Yeah, the usual thing or the usual question that comes into your mind is, what do you actually want to be doing as a data scientist when you join a company? Of course, you want to write some machine learning code, get some data, train the model, run the model, and then repeat that all the time until your machine learning model over time gets better and better. But what you end up doing, and I'm pretty much sure this picture is well known by some of you already, it's from a document from Google from 2015 already, so already some time ago. It tells basically that a data scientist or someone focusing on machine learning, just a small portion of his time can really focus on optimizing the ML code. Most of his time he's spending with data collection, taking care about some data verification, implementing some monitoring measures. He has to think about process management tools, configuration, serving infrastructure. So a lot of stuff that actually is not meant to be his main area of expertise or his main area of work. So what he got hired for to the company. So how can you change that? And this is almost the biggest question when a company wants to start with data science, machine learning, for example, add some data scientists in a dedicated team. Most of the time, those data scientists start outside the IT department because it's the proposed solution. Personally, I think it's a good way to have them near the business, near the functional expertise, because then they can really understand what's the company's goals. But is it just enough to add some cloud architects, some software architects, some software engineers, all those funny titles you see nowadays in various job descriptions? So how to start, how to mix up some first enabling team to start with DataOps. And there I would like to reference to Team Topologies. It's a book of Matthew and Manuel Brnjic. And this book really describes the various team structures, the various team topologies that you can have inside an organization. And I would say the best start for DataOps is if you start with an enabling team and ensure that you get data enthusiasts into the team right from the start. Doesn't matter if they are data engineers, ETL engineers, some software architects or programmers. You really have to have people that understand what are we doing and for what are we doing it. What's really the final vision? What's the goal? Of course, you should include at least one experienced software engineer because especially in that area nowadays, not everything is existing. You cannot just download a tool, fire it up, and everything works. You're running DataOps and you're data-driven. That simply doesn't work. So you have to be prepared that you have to invest a lot of time and resources to create your own data platform at your company among all teams. So that's why it's the best to start with an enabling team, and that enabling team goes into all the various stream-aligned teams, into all your Scrum teams, for example, into your feature teams, various domains, and starts one by one transforming them and transforming their mindset, because it's not just that this team starts as an enabling team and then all of a sudden the company is data-driven. That team really has to be an enabler. They have to play the role to come to another team and show them, first of all, help them. How do you program? How do you create data products? How do you implement your microservices in a way that not just a feature for the user interface at the very end pops up for the end user, but also valuable and reliable data sets that can be consumed by data scientists, by data analysts. And more on that on the next slides. So what about DataOps engineers? It started last year. I saw some job descriptions on LinkedIn, companies searching for DataOps engineers, and then I was like, okay, didn't know that there is already something in one person, that one person can be a DataOps engineer. But yeah, what's the ultimate? What does this person ultimately look like? So of course it should have some data science and distributed systems engineering knowledge, maybe 50-50 in terms of distribution. But what you usually find is either somebody is a systems engineer with some interest into data science, so he has some 80-20 distribution, or the other way around, he is data scientist and adds some capabilities, some knowledge for some DevOps, DataOps tasks. So yeah, on the bottom you see the expectation, but on the top you see the reality. So it's quite difficult to hire DataOps engineers from my point of view. As a company, you have to evolve into that you have people that can be called like, those are my DataOps ambassadors. They are really focusing on DataOps inside the company. They're trying to transform the whole situation and help other people, help other teams in really becoming data-driven. How does a cooperation between DataOps and data science usually look like? So in fact, the data science pipeline, as just stated a few minutes ago, you usually start with uploading some data set in the data store. You clean or prepare the data set. Even that cleaning nowadays can be automated. spawn some Jupyter notebooks, or they are already there. Depends on your environment and the size of the company, the amount of data you are working on. And then you start exploring the data, develop your model. At the end, the pipeline hopefully automatically does a model expert. And then the funny part starts. How do you automate CI/CD for data science or for ML projects? So usually you have to tackle things like distributed training, model testing. How do you do model testing? How do you do model optimization? How can you actually at the end compare those things? How can you do some A/B testing at the very end once it's really released? And how can you ensure that you actually have the full end-to-end process highly automated? Yeah. So maybe to summarize, data-driven mindset, what does this mean? By simply creating just a DataOps team, you will most probably fail. That means you need a group of people that is really going to change the way of thinking about data in the overall organization. So, and there are some additional topics that you should focus on while doing that. Rule number 1, you shouldn't simply pull data out of databases. Most of the time, it always starts with, hey, please, can you give me access to the database? You should really avoid giving anyone direct access to the database, even if it's just readable access, because seen that already a few times that even reading access to databases can get you into huge troubles, into huge problems, because if someone pulls a high amount of data during peak load of your service, of your product, whatever, it can definitely affect the servers, and you can definitely have some side effects. Yeah. And that's when the journey starts, when it gets really interesting. Most of the time, then the IT department really stops providing anyone with some connection strings to the database. And just the, for example, microservice development team that is really accountable for that service gets the access, and that's it, if at all. Yeah. Most of the companies also highly automate that process, so you don't get direct access to the production DB. Yeah. So somehow connected to the last slide, I would definitely say that empathy and collaboration is key in the overall story. Now, let's play it through. So how does it usually start, also with the cloud topics? Because you can imagine when you start getting data-driven and add some data scientists to your company, you want to get fast insights, get fast results, and of course, by those results, improve your overall revenue, your overall acting as a company, as an organization. So just take the use case that we need to go to the cloud because there is no compatible or comparable on-prem solution for something. So data scientist comes and tells, I need data in the cloud now. Most of the time he gets the question, especially in Europe, what's your goal? Why do you need to the cloud? Normally, you should answer with, okay, let's start step by step, but you get a lot of other questions. Who will access that? What will you do with it? And then at the end, the data scientist who actually wanted to go to the cloud becomes a little bit sad and maybe answers, okay, let me think once again about it. Maybe I can figure out to get a on-prem solution somehow, and we don't need the cloud. So as a company, you really have to show some empathy, and you have to have those enthusiasts, maybe within that enabling team, within that first team, at least one guy who really understands what we are trying to achieve and why it's necessary, for example, to use cloud instead of comparable on-prem solutions nowadays. So the answer should actually be, okay, if you provide me with a GDPR compliant shape or format of those data sets, and you prove that with our legal departments, that's okay. I can bring it to the cloud. Everything's fine. And in the end, hopefully, someone's there who can finally analyze everything and get the most value out of the data. Yeah. So that's where the fun part starts. That's when you start thinking about data products, because all of a sudden, not just your end customers are driving and putting in some new requirements, asking for new features, or you think about, what kind of new features can I provide to my end customers? All of a sudden, a whole new area of, I would say, product ownership starts evolving, because that's also, in my point of view, the start of the rise of the data product owner. And I will come more on that later. But data products are usually features that you don't provide in the first place, that you don't provide to an end user. Usually those data products are reliable data sets that are easily accessible, that you can quickly find if you have the access rights, of course, as a data scientist, and immediately see, based on, for example, on a data catalog, immediately see some code snippets, how you can quickly consume that data for your use. For example, for a data scientist, some code snippets in Python that he can just copy paste and start kicking into the data. And at the very end, of course, data products on a higher level produce also some insights to data analysts through dashboards. Yeah. There are various tools nowadays. So, to my point of view, the popularity of data products is also a way of measuring the successful adoption of DataOps in your company. So, if all of a sudden data products become more popular than the usual UI features in your software, then you definitely won. Then you took the next steps in becoming a data-driven company, where you value the data more, or at least to the same level as real UI features of your application. So yeah, what does this mean? Just that's a summary basically of what I just said. Data is a product. It means you treat data as a product to ensure quality and consistency over your whole landscape. The problem about the whole thing is that if you just provide someone with data access, how does he know that he can rely on that data? Is it true? Is it complete? If I access some customer database, who gives me the guarantee that I'm accessing actually all customers? Maybe I'm accessing a view that is already filtering new from old customers, active from inactive customers. So most of the time, such business logic gets hidden, depending on the implementation of the whole software, of the whole platform. But most of the time, such business logic is hidden for the data scientist or for the data analyst. He thinks he has access to some nice data sets, but in the end, after some analysis or some ML code iterations, he figures out that something is wrong. And then all of a sudden, he sees, for example, oh, the database just includes currently active employees, and the inactive ones, for example, that didn't buy a product or service for more than 6 months, are not in that data store you accessed. Yeah, that's a pity. And that's why I mean data as a product. You have to have data products in your company. And who can now be the product owner? So it can actually be the same person, but it depends on the domain size. I saw both constellations. So you can have a dedicated product owner for the product itself, for the UI product, but you also can have a separate data product owner who is really focusing on the data layer. As said, it can also be the same person, depending on the domain size, also depending on the capabilities of the person itself. So sometimes you have somebody who is simply not ready yet, who simply cannot take the data product ownership of a certain domain. I've also seen constellations where a solution architect or a senior software developer was the logical extension to the product owner, and he took care about the data product ownership. Yeah. So if you look now at the picture on the bottom here, you usually have various delivery teams, and that same team that delivers the operational feature should actually deliver their data products. So the data products are on the same level as operational feature, various UIs that this team produces. On the same level, you have ready-to-use data products, data outputs. They should, of course, in an optimal setup, also be indexed and cataloged in a data catalog. Nowadays, for example, which is some kind of data catalog that gets quite some nice feedback from the communities, from the DataOps communities, is LinkedIn's Data Hub, which is really nice. Already tried this one a few times for some projects, and it really pays off giving it a try. Okay, so to summarize, what are now the DataOps tasks or capabilities? Of course, just the usual ones, but quick summary. So one of the first tasks that will definitely run across your table if you want to focus on DataOps is, how can we establish and run a data catalog? You have to think about, okay, what is this data catalog actually what we are trying to achieve? Most companies fail because they try to maintain manually some kind of data catalog, which is constantly out of date. And that's why I just gave some example in the previous slide. For example, something like LinkedIn's Data Hub, it can build and update itself automatically and really integrates into your landscape. Then, of course, ensure the data science can do their work. Sounds easy, but it's not just providing them with some access and giving them some IDE where they can focus on their day-to-day Python scripting. They really have to have a fully integrated environment, which is fully integrated into an end-to-end CI/CD pipeline for machine learning. For example, by leveraging some Kubeflow or other cloud applications nowadays, you can really pretty easily achieve that. You have to operationalize ML, of course, do some reviews on the Python code. That's a nice one. Expectation, if companies hire data scientists, most of the time is that they can deliver production-ready outputs, hopefully on a daily basis. The reality, in fact, is data scientists can do some Python code for their personal needs, for some machine learning, but if you want to produce production-ready source code, you have to focus on way more things, and that's something that you can most of the time just learn over the years as a software engineer. And that's why I think at the beginning it's really necessary that you have some regular reviews of your Python experts, of course, of your data enthusiasts, with the data scientists, and see what's the best shape in bringing that Python code of a data scientist into production. Maybe giving them some blueprints, maybe working together with them in a pair programming session at the beginning, and then identifying really the parts that they are allowed to edit, etc. So, and coming to the last 3 points, but not least, you have to be able to host various data visualizations. So just providing some data access with a cataloged data catalog, with an index data catalog, where people can have direct access to some data sets, of course, is not enough. If you want to have popularity, you have to provide some nice visualizations together with the data scientists, where really the rest of the company starts valuing your work. And please move beyond the data lake. Data lake nowadays is really out of date, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of theoretical articles right now and presentations ongoing about data mesh. But in fact, it's really a nice thing. If you start concentrating yourself and working towards data mesh, you will really see that it pays off. Yeah, maybe a question at the end. Is it really just one DataOps team that can kick it off? How should it look like? Small recap, you saw this slide already, now a little bit more detailed. That's how a fully equipped data-driven company can structure the DataOps capabilities from my point of view. So, as said, you have an enabling team, which is usually this data platform support team that provides the whole platform. They provide the data catalog to all the other teams. They give the blueprints for the data scientists in terms of some Python code snippets. But you also have dedicated data product teams. And that's a level that you have to be able to reach over time, because at the beginning, you don't have dedicated data product teams. But if you start with one, with the second, with the third popular data product, all of a sudden the company will realize, hey, we can also have dedicated data product teams that are working just for new capabilities and providing new data products. They don't focus on first hand. They don't focus on some UI features, but if you think about it twice, producing nice data products that give value to data scientists, to data analysts, at the very end will produce also new features for the end customer. Maybe an automatic calculation of something, of some prices, some alarming system, some profiling or grouping of customers, figuring out their interests, or some preventional systems. And then at the bottom, you have this data platform team, which really operates the platform, because just programming or inventing inside a company a full-blown data platform with various tools and giving it to everybody and telling them, hey, please start using it, it obviously doesn't work. So that's why you need this enabling team that is going into each and every single team and trying to enable them to become data-driven, to use the data platform, and to get the most out of it. So thanks for listening. I hope I'm in time, and now we have some time for questions.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Manuel, for the great insights into the work of DataOps team and how to better prepare a company for them. And in that vein, the first question is, on a, let's say, global scale, how over the years, how did you see the progress of DataOps teams from, let's say, some of the very beginnings to now? Has it gotten better, hopefully, or worse, or something in between?
I think it's getting definitely better. I remember the first time when I started with that topic 6 years ago. My former employee employed actually 2 mathematicians. They called them really mathematicians. Hey, Manuel, we have now 2 mathematicians. How can we help them? And that's when I started reading articles, talking to other people in the industry, and asking what's the best way in onboarding data scientists, because back then they didn't start in the IT department, they started in the business department, and I was like, what are those people doing in the business department? We need to have them on our side inside the IT. That's how we can best support them. But over time, I understood that for a data scientist, it's definitely better to have his seat virtually or on-prem, doesn't matter, inside the business department, because that's where he wants to proactively generate new insights, generate value with his machine learning models or insights, create completely new ways of thinking for the business. So he's optimizing the business, not the IT. And then, of course, questions started popping up, not just in my case, but in all other cases. Okay, what's now the best constellation? And I remember there was one good research from Accenture back then in 2016, 17, about different structures. So you can either have data science outside of the IT and then a supporting team inside the IT, but you also can have data science inside the IT as a dedicated team. And in the end, it all comes down to, it's better to have data scientists within the business, and then not just one supporting team inside the IT, but the whole IT, and not just IT, the whole organization has to be quite patient and has to really ensure that the data scientists can deliver high value. So I would say from the very beginning, it started like, okay, we have some data scientists and we think they can code on themselves. Then a couple of years ago, the big realization, those guys cannot deliver production-ready source code at scale. And now we are in a mood where we move towards some low-code platforms, I would say, which is the next stage. So with low-code platforms, you enable those guys to really roll out production-ready software.
Great. Thank you for the answer. Unfortunately, we're out of time. But once again, thank you for insights, for your personal experiences as well. And I hope you enjoyed the presenting at this at the conference, and that you had fun. Thank you very much.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.